May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our strength and our salvation. Amen. Please be seated. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. I don't know about you, but I'm a child of the 80s and the 90s, and my mom was really into low sodium cooking. Low sodium. And table salt was not a thing. There was no opportunity to add more surreptitiously. We were just a low salt household. So my relationship with salt is ambivalent. I really, really like it, but I'm used to being deprived of it. And so this statement, you are the salt of the earth, I feel like my relationship with salt is not deep enough to understand what this means. So when you go to the shore, if you go to the shore, you'll see a lot of cars with bumper stickers that say Salt Life. Now, if you are like me, I thought that Salt Life was an evangelical bumper sticker about this gospel verse. Well, one day I had seen enough Salt Life things. I'm like, what is Salt Life? And so I Googled it. It is a brand for people who like the ocean. Yeah, it's like a clothing brand for people who like the ocean. But the truth is, we are called to the salt life. We're called to the salt life, or maybe even more aptly, we are called to living salty lives, which is funny because if you think about having a salty tongue, it's not necessarily something that we would advocate in church, but living a salty life is what we are about today. So I went down a rabbit trail of culinary videos about salt, and I don't know if any of you know Cook's Illustrated. Anyway, Cook's Illustrated is real into the science-y approach to cooking, so that is where I went. Cook's Illustrated taught me some things about salt that I think we ought to know. But let's just, before we explore salt more deeply, let's just think, what is the primary role of salt? The primary role of salt in human food is seasoning. And so I think in a certain way, this passage resonates for me differently and perhaps more if I say, you are the seasoning of the earth. You are the seasoning of the earth. What would that mean? I think it would mean that we are meant to make things a little more zesty, to add some pizzazz, to spice things up. It should mean that where Christians are living and working, life gets a little more flavorful. Our presence should result in a well-seasoned social milieu. You are the seasoning of the earth. But let's think a little bit more together about what salt does. So I think salt was an apt metaphor in the Bible because in the before refrigeration, salt was so very important. Food could be preserved by brining, by curing. All of these procedures involve salt to preserve food in an era before refrigeration. So in Jesus' world, there may have been more familiarity with the other roles that salt plays. So the most interesting thing that salt does that I read about, salt makes things more sweet and less bitter. More sweet and less bitter. So if we are the salt of the earth, our presence should make things more sweet and less bitter. And it does this not by eliminating bitterness, but by dampening down the bitter signals and amping up the sweet signals. It is not removing bitterness, it is just toning the bitterness down a bit, right? And so if we are the salt of the earth, the seasoning of the earth, our presence should be increasing sweetness. And I love it. When Rosh Hashanah comes around every fall, you'll see in many, the common Jewish wish for Rosh Hashanah is wishing you a sweet new year. It's not something we say much as Christians. Sweetness. Sweetness. And sweetness can be saccharine. We don't want to be saccharine, but sweet. So our presence as Christians should be making the world that we occupy sweeter and less bitter. But as important as these two things are, another thing that salt does is it balances flavors. And I found this really interesting. Salt dampens down the influence of some flavonoids and amps up others to create balance. So those flavonoids that are a little shyer, a little more reticent, a little less prominent, get boosted up a bit by salt, and the ones that are really aggressive and harsh and unyielding get tamped down a little bit. What a beautiful metaphor for how we are called to be as Christians in the world. We are meant to be people whose presence gives more space for those voices that have been marginalized, gives more space for perspectives that may not usually be heard, and maybe ask those people who have motor mouths to put a lid on it. A little bit, right? Just a little more balance, right? So we're making things more sweet, less bitter. We're creating balance. Another thing that salt does, it is a desiccant. You know those little sachets that come in like medicine bottles that keep your pills from getting moist? That's a desiccant. I didn't know. I mean, it makes sense. Salt is a desiccant. It dries things out. It draws water out. It draws water out, and as it does that, it enables flavors to concentrate. The image that came to my mind about this is, what if our presence drew water out? What would that mean? What if our presence created a place of safety such that people could shed a tear? The shedding of a tear. So many of us are still so private. When people cry in my office, they almost always apologize. They apologize. They apologize for crying. What if we Christians created places where people could cry? I think so much of the rage in our world is the result of our inability to grieve, to cry, to express sorrow and sadness. And as people are able to express their emotions, I think they become a bit more of themselves, right? So as flavors are concentrated, our personalities coalesce and concentrate. By enabling people to share more of who they are, they can be more themselves. You are the salt of the earth. You draw out tears so that people can be in the world in a more integrated and whole way. It's funny, too, because that action is called pickling, right? That's how you make pickles. We're called to pickle the earth. Pickle the earth. But what a beautiful thing it is to draw forth tears and to enable people to express who they really are. What else is salt used for? Brining. What does brining do? Brining tenderizes. And isn't that what we need so much more of? You are the salt of the earth. You are called to tenderize. Not only to be tender, but to tenderize. What a better way to tenderize than to welcome tears, to welcome grief, to welcome mourning, to welcome people just as they are. We tenderize by desiccating. Oh, that doesn't sound good, right? No, we're going to avoid that. But we are called to be, we're briners, we're picklers. I'm going too far with this. But I got so excited, right? Because when you think, you are the salt of the earth, and we think of that horrible salt that is encrusting everything right now and will not go away. No, you are the seasoning of the earth. You help to increase sweetness and reduce bitterness and balance things out and give space for those voices that are marginalized, to draw out tears, to concentrate personas and personalities, to tenderize. Oh, salt enhances aroma. Salt enhances aroma. You shall know they are Christians by their love, right? Maybe you should also know they are Christians by their smell. What kind of smell? Ooh, the smell of a potluck, the smell of fresh baked bread, the smell of welcome. You are the salt of the earth. We take these things in the Bible, we take them as far as we can to draw out as much as we can from these images that Jesus offers us. Now, you are the light of the world. I mean, that seems so impossible that I almost want to throw it away. I think of a lighthouse. I'm like, oh, you're the light. No, but think about other things light does. Light helps to expose the truth, helps us to see things as they really are. All of my liberal pastor friends this week have been passing around a meme What do salt and light both do? They melt ice. They help us to see what is. And we see something terrible. I think most of us see something terrible. And so even as we protest, even as we register our dismay, our horror, we are also called to tenderize, to increase sweetness. Even especially in these times that feel so dark and so despairing, when we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to do it alone. We are here together to support one another in being salt of the earth, so that as we go forth from this place, we can bring those bits of sweetness. We can help be a force of balancing, of tenderizing. So friends, I don't know about you, but a couple of Christmases ago, somebody gave me this enormous container of that flaky salt, right? There's like different kinds of salt now, right? I mean, there always were, but I didn't know about them in my low-sodium household. Anyway, did you know that fried eggs are delicious? They are so delicious with a little bit of salt. Wow, wow, wow. Life can be like that too, just a little bit of salt. Just a little bit of salt brings out the sweetness, makes things better. So friends, even as you protest, I encourage you also to remember all the meanings of being the salt of the earth and being the light of the world too. They're huge callings. They're unimaginably difficult callings. But when we break it down, I bet each of you can latch on to one of these things and bring a little bit more salt into your life and into your community this week. May it be so.